again, namaste everyone. So today we will continue our study of the Kena Upanishad. This is our sixth class on Kena Upanishad. The study of an Upanishad is not a difficult study. It has its own challenges, it has its own demands, but it is not difficult. Yet at the same time, it asks of us to bring to the study certain dispositions of heart and mind, only to ensure that this teaching becomes fruitful, that it is embedded, it opens our eyes to a certain reality. I know often the study of the Upanishad seems to be abstract, seems to be sort of abstract and philosophical, but it is not. It is not abstract, it is not philosophical. It speaks about a reality that is present everywhere, and a reality from which we are not at all separate. It is here and now. And what the Upanishad seeks to do is through this teaching to awaken us to this reality. It is a means of knowledge, as I spoke before, a pramana that reveals to us what immediately is here and now. So, we must never give up on this study. We have to dedicate ourselves, like the students in the text do, to this inquiry. So I said I wanted to make those remarks as a way of just encouraging us all to continue, even though sometimes we might find the subject matter difficult. But it is difficult only because sometimes it's unfamiliar way of speaking. So we looked at the question in the Kena Upanishad that initiated this dialogue, where the student asked his teacher, what is it? What is that shining reality, he calls it, that Deva, because of which I breathe, I take oxygen in, my breath flows in and out. Kena prana pratamaiti yuktaha, kene shitam vacham. What is that because of which I am able to speak, to see, to hear? What is that Deva, that shining reality, that luminous reality because of which my senses function, my mind thinks, that there is life in our bodies? And so we started to talk about this, the teacher's answer, and as we've seen, he gives a very unusual answer, which we have been discussing. He says, the way that I can speak about this to you, my students, is that it is srotrasya srotram. It is the air of the air. Srotrasya srotram. Vacha srotrasya srotram. Manaso manoyad. Mana is the mind. It is the mind of the mind. Manaso manoyad. Vacham. Vacho havacham. It is the speech of speech. Vacho havacham. Sau pranasya prana. It's a breath of breath. So he answers the question in this very unusual but deep and beautiful way. And then, of course, in that second verse, he says, and knowledge of this leads to freedom. Freedom, he mentions here, freedom from fear and anxiety of mortality and death. So we have now been discussing the third verse of Kena Upanishad. So obviously, he spoke in a way in the second verse when he says, it is the air of the air, it's the mind of the mind, it's the breath of breath. It is, the sense of all senses. Perhaps, as a good teacher, one is always looking at the faces of students to see if they if they grasp, if they get the way or the articulation of the of the teacher. And so that's one way of thinking, how the teacher returns to the subject matter in the third verse. And so he says, Na tatra chakshur gacchati. The eye does not go there. Na vag gacchati. And words don't go there. So in other words, perhaps, because the Upanishads in so many ways are concise summaries of what may have been more extensive discussions. But these texts, as I've said before, these conversations, these dialogues between teachers and their students were transmitted for most of their history orally, memorized and transmitted, and only very later in the history of these conversations were they actually written down. So to facilitate memory, the conversations have a certain precision about them. They avoid a lot of wordiness. They get down, they retain, the essence of the text. And this is, we have the Upanishads are not sutras, but they're very similar to sutras. We have a genre of writing in the Hindu tradition that is called sutra writing. And sutra writing is meant for memorization and oral transmission because it's just a series of very short sentences. Like you have Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. In 4 words, he starts with a definition of yoga and then goes on. So, but the Upanishads are very much like sutra texts. They leave out everything that is extraneous. They keep the essentials, and they do so with a wonderful brevity and precision of language. So perhaps the student looked surprised when the teacher said, Sruta is the A of the A, the I of the I. And maybe he was expecting a different way that this teacher would answer, a more customary way of using language. The first time that he heard a reality being described, in this way. So verse 3, the teacher says, Na tatra chakshur gacchati. The eyes don't go there. And na vag gacchati, and words also don't go there. Na manaha, and even the mind doesn't go there. In other words, I can't speak of it otherwise. This is the language that must be used because we are speaking about a unique reality here. So na tatra chakshur gacchati. Chakshuhu means the eye. Gacchati is to go. And tatra there. In other words, na tatra chakshur gacchati means the eyes don't go there where that reality is. That tatra here referring to the Atma. The eyes don't go there. Why do the eyes not go there? As we have discussed a little bit earlier, and then of course those of you who joined the classes for Nirvana Shatakam, this is a little bit of revision. Sravana again, but the Upanishads say listen again and again. Sravana, punah, again and again, listen. The eyes can only see, physical eyes can only see that which is an object before the eyes. They can know those things that are objects. The eye cannot see, the physical eyes cannot see that which is the eye of the eye. The air cannot hear that which is the air of the air. And this applies to all of the senses. The eyes can only see that which is defined by form. And when it is defined by form, it means it is a limited object. It has a shape. Rupa means shape. That which has shape can be seen by the eyes. So the Atma, that which the eye of the eye, does not have a form or shape which the eyes can see. It is not an object of sight. It is not an object of sight, and that's why the eyes don't go there. And in addition, because it is not an object of sight, don't expect me, the teacher is saying, to describe it to you as though it is an object, as though it has qualities of an object. So therefore, in other words, it's another way of saying, my dear student, my language will be different, my way of speaking will be different because of the nature of this reality. If I could see it, I will tell you what its shape is, what its color is, what its size is, what are its discernible features. I could easily speak about it in those terms, but not tatra chakshur gacchati. The eyes don't go there, because of course it's also a limited object. So then he adds, this is still verse 3, navak gacchati. Vak means speech, words. Gacchati, to go. So you see, the Sanskrit is very simple. Na, not, goes, gacchati, vak, words. Words don't go there. The eyes don't go there. The senses, so we can take for the eyes all of the senses, and words also don't go there. So remember now, in the second verse, in his answer, when he begins his answer to his student, he said about this Atma, it is vacho havacham. It is the speech of speech. It is that which makes speech possible, that because of which we speak. So by saying that the organ of speech does not go there, he's pointing out a point that we have made before about the limits of words, the limits of language in relation to describing this infinite being, this infinite reality. And you will remember in last class, you can always revisit the recordings. We discussed all the ways in which we use words to define things. For example, we might talk about, we define things on the basis of the species to which they belong. This is a human being, this is an animal, this is a plant. But this Atma is not a species of being. So all of the words that through which we define things by identifying the species don't work here. So we went through all of the ways in which we use language to define, and also to say that this reality, this divine one, is unique. And not that we can't use words, and this is very important because this is a point that will come in today's, as we unpack verse 3, not that we can't use words, but we have to use words in very special ways. We have to use words in very special ways to talk about that which is not an object. That's another reason why languages can't be used in its usual ways, because all of our language and all of our symbols have developed primarily to speak about things that are objects of the senses and objects, including, as we'll see, objects of the mind. But then words will fall short. Words have to be used skillfully. Words have to be used in very special ways if words can be helpful here. So this is a very important point, I think, about the limits of words. And it applies generally. It applies generally to religious traditions. Here we're speaking about the Upanishads, but I think it's a very valuable lesson that when we are speaking about the divine reality, we must always speak with humility about our words. Never think that our words correspond to who God is. Our words always fall short, and therefore we can only speak in humility, acknowledging the limitedness of what we say. There is always danger, historically, and even in today's world, when as human beings we think that we speak the words of God, that our words are God's words. And then we engage sometimes in various kinds of violent actions on the basis of those words. Let us, take this also as a general caution that when we use words, we acknowledge that the divine is more and beyond all of our words, and therefore let's speak with humility. So, na tatra chakshur gacchati, there the eyes do not go. There words, as used in ordinary ways, do not go. Na vak gacchati. So now there's an interesting moment in this conversation. So if this is not something that I can see with my senses, I can't touch it, I can't taste it, I can't smell it, I can't see it, I can't hear it. I have to be careful in how I speak about it. Then maybe I can see it with my mind. I can shut my eyes. And it is the mind, maybe my mind, the manaha, the mind becomes the instrument of knowing. In other words, where the senses fail, perhaps my teacher is talking about something that I have to see internally. I have to see with the instrument of the mind. And just as the student is thinking so, the teacher says, na mana, not with the mind. Don't look for it with the mind. Na tatra chakshur gacchati, the eyes don't go there. Na vag gacchati, words in the ordinary senses don't go there. Na mana. So na also, the negative. And the mind does not go there. Na manaha. The mind does not go there. So this is a much more interesting statement, because just for the purposes of analogy and teaching, sometimes when I can't see something with my senses, I can see it with my mind. So here, simple example, I'm sitting here in Minnesota in my home, and we are studying the Upanishad together. And sitting here, I can't see the Himalayan mountains. My eyes don't have that capacity. I can't see. Na tatra chakshur gacchati. My eyes can't go there because it is so far away, separated from me by space. But I can close my eyes. And if I've seen the mountains before, or someone has described the mountains to me, I can close my eyes and I can see the Himalayan mountains. So I can't see them with my eyes, but I can close my eyes and I could visualize the mountains as an object in my mind. So can I see Atma in this way? As an object within, as an object of my mind? And the teacher says, no. Na manaha. Not my words. The teacher's words, na manaha. And not the mind. And this is perhaps one of the most, I wouldn't say difficult, but dimension of the teaching where we should pause. Because here is where I think sometimes, we get it or we don't get it. So previously, we have seen that he spoke about this shining reality as the mind of the mind. Manaso mano yad. Manasaha, mind, manoha. It is the mind of the mind. So why does he need a separate statement that the mind does not go there? The mind also does not go there. So as I said, with my example of the Himalayan mountains, there are realities that the senses cannot objectify, but which the mind does. There are things that we can't see, with the senses, but which we can see with the aid of the mind. So for example, the thoughts in our minds. They're not available to be seen by the senses, but they can be seen by the mind, or my emotional states, my mental states, my emotional states. These are all available for experience and knowledge directly, firsthand, immediately by the mind. But here, the teacher says, na manaha, not by the mind. So what we have to understand is that Atman is not an object of any of the senses. We have seen that. Here, the teacher says, and it is not an object of the mind also. It is not an object of the mind. All thoughts, all mental states, all emotional states, in Sanskrit we speak of these as vrittis, all vrittis, movements of the mind, transformations of the mind. All of these are momentary. They come and they go. One thought is replaced by another thought. Thoughts are transient, mental and emotional states come and go. But Atma is not momentary. One thought is replaced by another thought, but Atman is not, doesn't waver. It's not a transient reality. It doesn't suddenly appear as an object to the mind and then disappear to be replaced by something else. So when the teacher says, Namanaha, the mind doesn't go there, we should understand clearly that Atma is not a thought like other thoughts. And Atma is not an emotional state as well. It is not an emotional condition. It brings about, when we know what it is, it transforms the mind. And that's quite clear. It brings about certain changes. Awakening to the Atma, awakening to oneself is transformative for one's thinking and one's emotional state. But Atma itself is not a thought or an emotional state. It is, and now we'll come to that point. It is he uses the word deva in the question. It is the divine light of awareness, because of which we know all thoughts. We know all states of the mind. In that sense, it's the mind of the mind. That's because of which we can say, this is my thought. This is what I know. It's the illumining reality because of which all thoughts are known, all mental states are known. So the teacher then adds, again, I as a teacher, I can imagine he's still looking and seeing this puzzled look on his students' mind. Does this thing exist? We can't see it with our senses. And when we don't see something with our senses, at least we can see it with our minds. But now our guru is saying, Natatra chakshur gacchati, the eyes don't go there. Words have to be used in special ways. The mind doesn't go there. It's not an object of the mind. Does this thing exist? Is he speaking about something that's real to us? Because he seems to be negating all ways of knowing that we are familiar with. And maybe they said as much to him. And therefore he adds, still in the third verse, Navijani ma yatha etad anushishyat. Navijani ma yatha etad anushishyat. So yatha etad, about this, he says, please understand, yatha etad anushishyat, that if I am to speak to you, if I am to teach you, there is no other way. I don't know. He says, Navijani ma, we. In fact, he uses the plural. We don't know any other way of teaching. We don't know any other method by which we can teach. Navijani ma, vijani ma, to know. We don't know yatha etad anushishyat. How else? What are any other way that we can speak about this to you? There is no other way to teach. So we here, the plural pronoun that is used by the teacher in the text, refers to what we speak of as the sampradaya, the lineage of teachers and students, the succession of teachers and students. In other words, he's saying, I who belong to this lineage of gurus and shishyas, of teachers and students, we don't have any other way of teaching. So he's not denying the possibility of teaching, but what is affirming here, that this way in which I am teaching is the only way that I have learned from the sampradaya. And the unique reality that I am trying to get you to understand, that which is not an object, a non-object, cannot be spoken of as though it is an object. We have to speak of it in unique ways. If he could not speak, he would not respond to the student's answer. But he's emphasizing that this, please be patient, that this is a special mode of speaking. Iti, and then adds. So that's why I'm suggesting, that perhaps there was some more conversation with the student. And then he adds, Iti susruma purvesham ye nastad vyachachakshire. So after saying, we don't know, I don't know any other method by which I could teach you about this or answer your question. Then he says, Iti susruma purvesham, from our ancient teachers, from that lineage of ancient teachers, susruma. This is how I also learned, susruma. I learned from my teacher how I am teaching you. Susruma means to hear. This is how I heard from my teacher. Ye nastad vyachachakshire. This is how they taught us, and this is how I heard this teaching that I am imparting to you. This is how we have heard it stated by our gurus who taught us that. So he's citing for his teacher, his students, this lineage, this flow of knowledge that also comes with a methodology of teaching. There is a method that I'm using here. And when we say, we're studying the Upanishad in a traditional way, we are also pointing to this method of teaching. It is a teaching, but also a teaching that comes with a methodology that the guru is employing here. And then he adds very beautifully, after saying that, he gives him another teaching in a very short statement he makes. So he says, this is how I have heard it. This is how I learned it. This is how I knew what it meant. This is how I understood it. And then he says, Anya deva tad viditad atha aviditad hadihi. Anya deva tad viditad aviditad adhi. So that's how he ends the third line. Very fascinating statement. This is how we heard it. So I'm telling you again, exactly what my teachers told me. Consider this. So two important words in this sentence, in the third verse, vidita and avidita. Vidita and avidita. So vidita means the known. And then when you put the negative prefix avidita, the unknown. So vidita, avidita, known and unknown. Known and unknown. Anya deva tad viditad atha aviditad adhi. So anyat eva tad viditad. So as I said, vidita means that which is known. So anyat, different. Our teachers, when they wanted us to understand, they said that it is different from the known. They told us that this Atma is anyat eva tad viditad. that it is different from what it is known. That's the first half of the sentence. And that we can understand, because he said it in different words earlier on when he said, na tatra chakshur gacchati, na va gacchati. He was also saying that it is different from, when he says it's different from the known, what he means here is that it's different from objects of knowledge. So we can see that meaning it is different from objects of knowledge, because it is not an object of knowledge. So he says it is different from that which is known, because as I've explained already, all things known are objects of the senses or of the mind, but Atma is the light of awareness, because of which everything is known. Right? It is the knower, we can say. Let us say it is the knower and not the known. In Sanskrit, we have a beautiful word that we use for this. We say Atma is adrishya, adrishya. So drishya means that which is seen, which can be known by the senses. We can even add the mind here also, but Atma is adrishya. Adrishya means that which is not seen as an object, that which is not seen as an object. So anyat eva tad viditat. So our guru said to us that this reality that you want to know is different from everything that is known. It is not an object of knowledge. So that must be understood. So then, if it is not known, what is it? There are only two possibilities a student would be thinking. Then it is unknown. That which is known, that which is not known immediately is unknown. It's a kind of a dualistic thinking. If something is, if I say I do not know, then what is the opposite? So known and unknown. Something is either known or something is unknown. Something is unknown or it is known. There are these two possibilities. So if the teacher says to them that this Atma, anyat eva tad viditat, that it is not known, immediately the mind jumps. Aha. We understand. It is aviditat then. It is unknown. It is unknown. It must be unknown. It has to be one or the other. Language offers us only two possibilities in this case, known and unknown possibilities. Something cannot be both known and unknown. Is it? Okay. If it is not one, it has to be the other. It can't be both. And just as the students are thinking so, and he reads their minds, that they don't know I've said it is not known, they are going to think that it is unknown. So he adds, Atha avidita adhi. Atha, moreover, please, he says, adhi aviditat. It is also different from the unknown. Ataha adhi aviditat. Oh, beautiful. It is also different from the unknown. It is not known, it is neither known nor unknown. See how the beauties of language here in the Upanishad. Ataha avidita atadi. It is different from the unknown. Again, does it mean it is non-existent? After all, things are either known or they are unknown. And if this is how we think. Many people, this is one of the big arguments, that people, many give even for when it comes to whether God exists or not. And one argument that many would make, if God exists, then why don't we see God? Why isn't God a known reality, like any other object in the world? So this is why, when we're having this discussion with anyone or with our students, and they say we don't believe in God, then a good place to start the discussion is to tell me about that God that you don't believe in. What is the nature of that God? And that makes a more fascinating discussion with a student. Because if you say you reject God, then you also have some notion of that which you are rejecting. You have some understanding of it, and on the basis of that understanding, you reject. So what here the teacher says that Atma is not known, and it is also not unknown. Neither known nor unknown, but not non-existent. Not non-existent. Not non-existent. So, as I said earlier, there are some things which may be currently unknown, but later become known. And when these are known, then when these become known, then they're no longer unknown. Right? When they are known as objects. So, I gave example in last class, because I know most of you don't know. I spoke about a particular fruit that is, I think it originated in Africa, and it was brought to the Caribbean at the time of the slave trade and became a staple item in the diet of Africans. And then, of course, all else in the Caribbean. It's called the breadfruit. And I said, most of you don't know what it is. It's unknown. Breadfruit is avidita. It is unknown. But at some point in time, if you visit Africa or you visit the Caribbean, or if I brought a breadfruit to you, provided I'm allowed to bring it through agriculture and the customs, you can see what the breadfruit is. So the unknown breadfruit becomes known to you. So it's unknown, but it can become known. But by saying that Atma is different from the unknown, the teacher wants to ensure that we don't think of it in this way. That is somehow it is not known here, but it can become known. Why? When you come to know the breadfruit for what it is, then you will still know it as an object. So an unknown object becomes known. And that's also true for states of mind. Atma, as I said, is not a thought in the mind. It is not a particular condition of the mind, because all of these states of mind are transient. And unknown things can also be separated from us by time. So if you're not yet retired, and I ask you, what does it feel to be retired? You can say, I don't know, because I'm not yet retired. Right? It's unknown to me. The emotion of being a retired person is unknown to me as an object, as a state or as an experience in my mind. But then you work long and you save, and I see you after a decade and I said, what does it feel to be a retired person? And then, of course, you no longer say it's unknown. You describe to me the thoughts in the mind that are associated with this phase in your life. So a state of mind can be unknown and then become known. An object can be unknown and then it becomes known. So in these cases, there is some separation, either by space or separation by time, which eventually these forms of separation are bridged. So if you have never traveled to Iceland, for example, Iceland remains unknown by space, by a distance, a gap of space. And then, of course, you travel there. The spatial distance is bridged, and you know what Iceland is. But in this case, Atman is not separated from us by time. It is, as the teacher said, at this very moment, it's the eye of the eye. It is the air of the air. It is the mind of the mind. It is the speech of speech. It is here and now. So no time gap has to be bridged for us to know it. And no space gap has to be bridged also for us to know it. It's present, here and now. There's nothing closer to us than ourselves, than who we are. So the most important reason for this statement, for describing Atma as that which is different from the known, vidita, and the unknown, avidita, is that Atma as light, awareness, the light of awareness, that makes both vidita and avidita known. It reveals both knowledge and ignorance. It reveals both the known and the unknown as conditions of the mind. In other words, I am aware of that which I know, and I am also aware of those things that I don't know. At least I know that I don't know. I know that I don't know. I know that I know. Both are conditions of the mind. Both are mental conditions. So to give you an example, if I asked you, could you tell me the year in which Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, was born? What is the generally accepted? I don't want to get into a dispute about the date of the Buddha. What is the generally accepted date for the birth of the Buddha? And then if you don't know, you'll say, I don't know. I don't know. It is unknown. To me, it is unknown. And you know that you don't know. You know that you don't know. And if you know, you will say, well, I've read that Siddhartha was born in the year 563 BC. You know. And you know that you know. See what? Say? You know when you don't know. You said, I don't know when he was born. And that thought is known. Or you said, he was born in 563 BC. And that thought is also known. Known and unknown. Known and unknown. Both revealed, both illumined, both known by you, by the light that you are, the light that is Atma. So known states of the mind and unknown states of the mind, both are modifications of the mind. They are both vrittis and they are both illumined by Atma. It is the awareness, as we have spoken before, that illumines both conditions of the mind. It illumines knowledge when we have knowledge. It also illumines ignorance when we don't know. I know what I know, and I know the many more things that I don't know. Vidya and avidya, vidita, avidita. And therefore, Atma, the awareness that illumines both of these states or conditions of the mind, is therefore different. So you have this very important, so a sentence like that, what is the purpose of it? The purpose is not simply to offer to his students words. When he says, Atman is vidita and avidita, it is not simply to give his student words about the Atma, but to cause, I would have to say, to bring about an appreciation of themselves as the illumining awareness at that very moment that makes both knowledge and ignorance in the mind known. They should come to appreciate there and then that I am Chidananda Rupa, that I am that illumining awareness because of which all mental conditions, knowledge and ignorance are known. Therefore, of course, we'll be clarifying this throughout this text. Therefore, without objectifying, without making it into an object, without objectifying, we must come to know. Without objectifying, because you can't objectify the Atma. Without objectifying, we must come to own, this is what I am. I am, using the language of Nirvana Shatakam, I am that awareness, that illumining awareness, which cannot be objectified, and because of which all objects in the world and all mental states are known. There is only one reality that cannot be objectified, and that's you and that's me. Everything else can be objectified. It is the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind, the air of the air, and so on, as we have seen. You know, the mind, the body, the senses are very beautiful instruments for us. They are the instruments through which we experience the world and through which we live in this beautiful creation. But they themselves depend upon and are illumined and energized and made alive by the presence of Atma, which is what we are, you and I are. So without objectifying, we should come to understand this truth about who we are, about the Atma. So I give you an illustration. Now think of the mind as a lake. A lake. And or you can think of it as a mirror if you wish to, as a mirror. A mirror that consists of thoughts. And this lake, I use the lake and the mirror because they help me to make different points. You know, when the lake is, if there's a wind and the lake is the waters of the lake are rough and moving and so on, you can't see anything. It's the water is very clear, but it's subject to motion and wavering and tossing up and down, and therefore you can't see anything in it. If, when this lake becomes still, then you can see clearly into the depths of the lake, and the lake can reflect also anything that is close to it. You know, we see the trees, we see the clouds in the lake. In the fall time, it's very beautiful. We see colors in the lake because the lake is now still, and the lake will reflect anything that is very close to the lake. It becomes a transparent lake. So in the lake of the mind, right now, this mind is subject to avidya. It is subject to ignorance. Its thoughts. It doesn't know what the self is. You know, it regards the self as identical with the physical body, with the senses, with the mind, etc. It doesn't know. When through this process of teaching, this wisdom brings about stillness of the mind, clarifies the mind, stills the mind, like a clean mirror without any dust, or like a lake that is no longer tossing about. It's a still lake. And in this still lake, there is a single thought. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, we saw. In this still lake of the mind, Chidananda, I am that awareness, immortal awareness, that is all peace, that is all light, that is the self of all. When I look into the lake of the mind that is still and quiet, the mind corresponds in knowledge to what I am. But you don't objectify, never objectifying, but in the lake of the mind, I recognize who I am. Because now there are thought forms in the lake of the mind that correspond to what I am. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing a perfect reflection of yourself. This is who I am. And then you wish those thoughts, can go also, and you can abide, and you can abide in that stillness. Doesn't matter. Whether awake or active, as long as that conviction, nischaya jnana, that conviction there is in the mind, aham brahmasmi, as the Upanishad said, I am Brahman. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. I have come to recognize, I have come to know myself without making myself an object, because I can't. I cannot objectify myself. I cannot make myself an object, but I can recognize myself through knowledge. And that's what it is, to know who I am in the stillness of the mind that is transformed. The mind is transformed by knowledge, and that knowledge I recognize. In the lake of this wisdom, I recognize myself. So even Upanishads say that the mind is the instrument of knowing, but not through the process of objectifying. Not through the process of objectifying. This knowledge, as I will explain in subsequent classes as we go through the text, this is called the practice of knowledge. The practice of knowledge, jnana abhyasa, because they are long ingrained habits of ignorance or avidya that have, right now our minds are transformed by long ingrained habits of thinking that are formed, in the process of growing up, process of socialization. And these are ingrained habits of thinking that are contrary to who we are, to the truth of ourselves. Those ingrained habits have to be transformed by the process of knowledge. So we need the regular practice of knowledge. Once we understand, each day we look into the mirror of the mind and we recollect who we are. There's a beautiful mantra that I would like to teach. I taught many years ago. It's a mantra to be used for this purpose on mornings. Prataf smarami. So in the morning, prataf smarami, I remember. Prataf smarami hridisam spuraratma tattvam. I remember this, my own self-shining awareness. When I wake, I remember. Prataf smarami hridisam spuraratma tattvam. I remember myself, self-shining awareness. Prataf smarami hridisam spuraratma tattvam. Jagrat swapna sushuptim avati. That which is present in all states of experience, when I am waking, when I am sleeping, when I am dreaming, that which always is Tad Brahma Nishkalam Aham, that shining reality I am. So these are verses, like this. We have so many verses I can teach, which are to be used, for daily, for this practice of knowledge. So that we awake, remembering, the truth of ourselves, and we live with the truth of this wisdom. So this concludes the third verse of Kena Upanishad. And then we will see when we continue the next movement in the text, where the teacher goes in this really, exquisite ancient discussion that, I am privileged to learn and to study together with you. So thank you very much for, for our class today, for attending.